All right, Hare Krishna, everyone back?
Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Yes. All right, so we're going to hear from each group. Let's have a spokesman for group number 1 to tell us about Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. So we discuss a few points. The first point from Srila Prabhupada's purport is that the word Vasudeva indicates the plenary portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and many avatars or different forms of the God. And the Vasudeva word also indicates that it is the son of Devati. So mentioning this Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya in the first verse, in the first line of the first verse, Srila Vasudeva indicates that the Vasudeva is the supreme God whom is offering the obeisances. So it's like the first person whom we offer obeisances when the others are present in the assembly. So the first point is this. The second point is Vasudeva also depends the word Bhagavan in front of the word Vasudeva. So it directly means that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna himself declared himself to be the Supreme God in various verses. Like Aham Sarvasya Prabho, Natra Nanyat, Aham Bija Pitaha, Bhunam Janmaramante, Vasudevam Sarvamiti, Swamatma Swadurlabha. So Vasudevam Sarvamiti is again, this verse indicates that Lord Krishna is the source of everything. And Lord Krishna also says that Mana Mana Bhava Mada Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. So these are the various verses in Bhagavad Gita which also corroborates that son of Vasudeva, the Lord Krishna, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead from Satya.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, very good. Very clear. All right, let's hear from group number 2. Group number 2, discussing Janmadhyasya Yato Navayaditaritas Jartishu Abhigyanaswarat.
Yes, Maharaj. So here, like our group number 2, we worked towards it and we have noted some of the points. So first, the meaning of this part of the shloka is, I meditate upon Lord Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance and destruction of the manifested universe. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestation and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. And he also says Lord Krishna is the origin of all creation. He is not only the creator of the universe, but the destroyer as well. The manifested cosmic nature is created at certain period by the will of the Lord. It is maintained for some time and then it is annihilated by his will. Therefore, the supreme will is behind all cosmic activities. And then we have we want to quote some of the analogy which Prabhupada talked about, like the chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction, but he knows every nook and corner because everything is done under his direction. He knows everything about the construction, both directly and indirectly. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is supreme engineer of the cosmic creations, knows every nook and corner. Although affairs are being carried out by the demigods. Another analogy is the chemist can manufacture water in the chemical laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen, but in reality, the living entity work in the laboratory under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Chemist laboratory is compared with the whole cosmic laboratory, and for which the chief chemist is the Supreme Lord, and the material with which he works and also supplied by the Lord. So basically, not only he is chemist, but all the ingredient also is supplied by the Lord himself. And the Lord knows everything directly and indirectly. He is cognizant of all minute details and is fully independent. So that's then another analogy is this compared to the mind of gold, and the cosmic creation is in so many different forms as compared to the objects made from the gold. So all these living entities compared with the this different object which is created out of this gold coming out of gold mine. So absolute truth is simultaneously one is absolute truth, and last is the manifested cosmic nature is created at a creation period by the will of the Lord. So this is compared to the modern scientists who creates the satellites, and by some arrangement or the other, these satellites are launched. So similarly, the Lord has created all this cosmic entity, and it has been launched in the cosmic universe. So then we intend to quote some of the slokas as a reference from Bhagavad Gita. So one is Bhagavad Gita 7.7, Mag Parakram Nasya Dhananjaya Mai Sarmidam Sutte Mani Gana. O conqueror of will, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls and strung on a thread. So similarly, we have reference from Bhagavad Gita 10.8 and 15.15. And in the last, we have a reference to the Shruti mantra, and it also stated that Brahman is the ultimate source of everything. Everything emanates from him, and everything is maintained by him. And absolute truth or Brahman, material science, like here again, analogy is given to material scientists take granted for the ultimate source of electricity, like sun, but they are unable to explain the source of the sun. So here, the cosmic creator, he not only created the whole entire universe, but he also knows every nook and corner of it. So our group members, something you want to add?
Yeah, this is very good. You did many nice analogies from Prabhupada's purport. I was very happy to hear all those analogies quoted from Prabhupada's purport. You'd studied the purport carefully. That was very good. What about this connection with Vedanta Sutra? The Janmadhyasya, right? Because Vedanta Sutra also begins like that.
Yes.
Right? The Vedanta Sutra also begins Janmadhyasya. So this Srimad Bhagavatam, this is actually the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. We're getting the explanation of Vedanta from Srimad Bhagavatam. All right? And Vedanta Sutra also reveals to us what is the absolute truth. Okay, very good. Very nice. Happy to hear all that. All right, now we'll hear group number 3. Who is the spokesman?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I'll try.
Yes, please. Hare Krishna.
So our verse was Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye Muyanti Yat Surya. And the meaning of this as given in the translation is that it is he who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji. So that is the reference that the Vedic knowledge is first coming from Krishna, and it is he who imparted to the heart of Brahmaji and the original living being. And by him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusionary representation of water seen in fire or land seen on water. And these are, so here he talks about Maya and his illusionary representation also. And first I'll cover the purport, and then I'll go to some other references from Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita and Brahma Samhita. So in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that the Lord knows everything directly and indirectly, and he's cognizant of all minute details, and he's fully independent. Absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. Nothing is absolutely equal with the absolute truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the absolute truth. And then he also mentions that conditioned souls, beginning from Brahma, who engineers the entire universe down to the insignificant ant, are all creating, but none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialist wrongly thinks that there is no creator other than his own self. So here is giving the reference of Krishna as the creator of everything. And in the verse, it is mentioned, Brahma is mentioned as the Adi Kavai. And in Brahma Samhita, Brahma himself prays to Lord Krishna, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchid Ananda Vigraha, Anadi Adi Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. And he also mentions Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Ham Bhajami. So that's the prayers by Brahma to Lord Krishna. And Arjuna in verse 10.13 of Bhagavad Gita mentions Param Brahma Param Dhama. He mentions to Krishna that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person. So that's the mention given by Arjuna. And then talking of, even in 4.1, in verse 4.1 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has mentioned Imam Vishvate Yogam. So he is the one who has instructed the knowledge first to the sun god and sun god to Manu and things like that. So that's how it has come down the parampara. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, talking of Maya, it is mentioned Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andhakara. So Krishna is like sun and Maya is like darkness. So that is why Maya bewilders people. And Krishna himself says in 7.14 in the Bhagavad Gita, Devi Esa Gundamai Mam Maya Durataya. And this divine energy of mine is very difficult to overcome. But those who surrender unto me can easily cross it. So these are some of the references and the explanations that we had. Our group was Surya Kumar Prabhu, Dyuti Gopi Mataji and Hari Gopal Prabhu. So if anyone would like to add on anything, I would request from the group if they would like to add on. Hare Krishna.
Tenhi Brahma Hridayadi Kavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha. Translation again, Prabhu?
Yeah. He is the only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion as one is bewildered by illusionary representation of water seen in fire or land seen.
Yes, Muyanti Yat Surayaha. Even the great sages are bewildered. Okay. Yes, very nice. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, then we'll go on. Group number 4.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Pranams.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
So I'm representing group 4. Based on what we discussed, I would like to present the points that we have scattered. So the part of the verse we have is Tejo Vadi Mridam Yata Vihivayo Yatra Trisargum Visha. The translation goes, only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. So considering the factual, appear factual and the material modes of nature, we'd like to pick up on the analogy first from the purport. So the analogy here is about the desert, where in the purport Srila Prabhupada mentions, Srila Vyasdeva says here in the manifested internal potency is real, whereas external manifested energy in the form of material existence is only temporary and illusionary, like the mirage in the desert. In the desert mirage, there is no actual water. There is only the appearance of water. Real water is somewhere else. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but reality of which this is but a shadow is in the spiritual world. So this analogy clearly determines the relative truth and absolute truth. So how we can understand that Krishna's absolute truth is that the material world manifestation, is depending upon him. So in the verse, Bhagavad Gita verse 9.10, we can see Krishna explains that everything is created from him. He is the Maya Dakshina Prakriti, Sunyate Sacharacharam. He is
this material nature is one of my energies working under my direction, and everything non-moving and producing all moving and non-moving. Under its rule, the manifestation is created and related again and again. So Krishna has established this point that he is the one. And second verse of Bhagavad Gita, which we like to talk about, is the 15.1 verse, where it mentions about Urdhva Mula Madha Shakam, that I just read that. One verse. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that is its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the knowledge, Vedas. Basically, it is mentioning that the material world is nothing but the shadow of the original or absolute truth. And then there are verses from Bhagavad Gita 7.4 where the earth, water, fire, which we read in this verse, Tejo, Vari, Mridam, everything is nothing but the extended or energies of the separated energies of the Lord. The Lord is a controller. So through all these points, what we understand is Krishna is controlling these energies. He is the original. Everything rests upon him. That is another verse in Bhagavad Gita, and you can understand that Krishna is the absolute truth in all respect.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody else in my group would like to add any points? You can mention.
Okay, we'll go ahead to the group number 5, the last group, the last section of the first verse.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So the text was Dhamna Svena Sada Nirashtapuhukam Satyam Param Dhimahi. So the translation is, he is eternally existent in his transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusion. I meditate on that absolute truth, Lord Krishna. So going word by word, first word is Dhamna Svena Sada. So he is always existent in his transcendental abode. So his abode has been described as transcendental, which is beyond any material creation. So, and also supporting this, we have in Brahma Samhita, Brahmaji is telling that his abode is very beautiful, and like Chintamani, Prakara Sarma Shivkalpa Vriksha, and also Lakshmi Sahasra Satra Samruval Sevimanam. So that way, it is beyond any material creation. So definitely, only the absolute truth or Lord can have such an abode. So this statement proves that he is the absolute truth. And then coming next to Nirashtakukam, so which is forever free from illusion. So Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says that Devi Esha Gurumai Mammaya Duratya. So so whoever can surrender to Krishna only can cross this illusion of the material world. So that is again a proof that his world or his abode, it is free from illusion, and so Krishna is the absolute truth. Then also it is mentioned in the purport that another name for God is anyone who wants to get rid of the material entanglement must surrender unto him. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, it is certain that he will be bewildered. When an intelligent man surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna and knows completely that Krishna is the cause of all causes, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, then only can such an intelligent man become a Mahatma or great soul. So this is also supported by this Satyam Param Dhimahi, where Vedvyas is offering his obeisances, or he's meditating. Dhimahi means he's meditating on the Lord. So Vedvyas, who is the author of so many scriptures, he has written Bhagavatam and all the Puranas and everything. And if such a personality, he is meditating on Krishna, so definitely he has to be the absolute truth. So this again proves that he is the absolute truth. And also it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says that even, Vyasa, Narad and Asid, and they will, everybody has told me that you are the absolute truth. So that, and Another statement is that another name for God is Asamurdhava, which means that no one is equal to or greater than him. Param Satyam, or the supreme truth, is he who has no equal or superior. So again, this proves that he is the absolute truth. So if anybody would like to add from the group, you're most welcome. Thank you, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, I would like to hear a bit about the significance of the Dimahi, Param Satyam Dimahi.
Yes, Maharaj. So it is said that Vyasadeva, he is meditating on the absolute truth, Lord Krishna. So if Vyasadeva, who is the author of so many scriptures, he has written Bhagavatam and all the Puranas and all the Vedas, if he is meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that means he is meditating on Krishna. So Krishna has to be the absolute truth. He has to be much superior to Vyasadeva. So this is again an indirect evidence that Krishna is the absolute truth, because he is meditating on Krishna, who is the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. So that is one thing about Dhimahi. And also, like Arjuna, he also mentions that Narad and Asit and Deval and Vyas, they all have said that you are the Supreme Personality of God, and now I am myself hearing this from you.
Yeah, but one point is that this Dimahi, this is invoking the Gayatri Mantra.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, Maharaj.
The Gayatri Mantra. And the Gayatri Mantra, because this is Bhagavatam, so for public we don't put the whole Gayatri Mantra, it just puts the Dimahi. But that's significant, that's the Gayatri Mantra invoked. And the Gayatri Mantra is a meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah.
So we see also how this verse, this Dimahi, that this whole verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, this is also meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
And this verse, this Dimahi, this is there, it comes at the end of the Bhagavatam also. Not exactly the end, but almost at the end, in the final chapter. So at the beginning and at the end, the whole Bhagavatam is Krishna, the meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We see in Valmiki Ramayana also, they use the guide. Valmiki, when he wrote the Ramayana, he put the 24 syllables of the Gayatri Mantra, each syllable, every 1,000 words, one syllable from the Gayatri Mantra, every 1,000 words. So the whole Valmiki Ramayana is like that, it's composed around the Gayatri Mantra. So here also, Srimad Bhagavatam, it begins with the Gayatri Mantra, invoking the Gayatri Mantra, which is a meditation on the Supreme Lord. So we can understand also Srimad Bhagavatam to be meditation on the Supreme Lord.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Are there any questions from anybody? We'll go ahead. We're still on the PowerPoint here. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vyasadeva is explaining what is Krishna. First of all, let us understand what is Krishna. Then we enter into the other information of Krishna. So our Krishna consciousness movement is against all this rascaldom. Right? All this rascaldom. The people, they don't understand what is Krishna. But they're speaking Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. They don't know who is Krishna. They don't understand properly what is Krishna. So Prabhupada is preaching against all these rascals. Prabhupada continues, he said, we present, here is God, take his name, take his address also. That is also, it is so perfect. They are searching after God. We are giving the name, address, activity, everything, quality, all. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first verse, first canto, first chapter, first verse, London, 1971. I must have been there. I must have heard this lecture. All right. Now, a couple of significant points in this first verse. We didn't stress very much, but we want to bring to everyone's attention the significance of these two words, abhigyana, swarat. Abhigyana and swarat. Abhigyana meaning knows everything, cognizant of everything. And swarat meaning totally independent, fully independent. Prabhupada said, so I am conscious to a certain extent only, not fully. I am not abhigna. I am not very expert. These are simple truths. But these rascals are claiming that I am God. God is not only conscious, He's abhigna, very expert, knows everything, and swarat. Right? So He's very expert and He's also swarat, He's independent. Now, to get abhigna or experience, we have to consult somebody. But God is swarat. Swarat means He's personally so independent that He doesn't require to take knowledge from anyone else. That is God. From Prabhupada's lecture on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 17, also in London, 1973. So very nice points Prabhupada makes, very clear, to bring out the significance of these words, abhigna and swarat. Right? To be expert. Usually someone's expert, you have to consult somebody. You take someone's advice. But God, He's not only abhignana, He's also swarat. He's totally independent. He doesn't require to take knowledge from someone. So these two qualities, they're unique to the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Nobody else could be abhignana and swarat at the same time, except for Lord Krishna. That is God. Okay, you recognize this place? Does it look familiar?
Looks like London.
Really? Looks like London? Maybe.
And just
Why does there appear to be reality in the material world? Yes?
Because it is a replica of the spiritual world.
I'm sorry, Madaji, what did you say?
Because it is a replica of the spiritual world.
Yes, right. Because the material world is some kind of a mirage of the spiritual world, right? It's a shadow of the spiritual world. Not exactly a replica, but it's some kind of dim reflection of the spiritual world. So there is reality, but not here, not in this world. The reality is in the spiritual world. And there appears to be reality here, but that is just because there is reality, but we're not finding the actual reality in this world. It's just simply the mirage or the dim reflection of the reality here. we want to experience the reality, we have to go there. So this was described here. Tejo vari mridam yata vinimayo yatra trisagomash. As bewildered by illusory representations of water seen in fire and land seen on water. So these illusions are there. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of material nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. They're definitely not real, but they appear to be real. It appears to be our home, it appears to be a place we belong to. So we should understand the temporary nature of these worlds. And this is all due to him. Because of him, the material universes have this appeal. Srila Prabhupada explains to us about the nature of the relative and absolute truth. Sri Vyasadeva says, herein that the manifested internal potency is real, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of material existence is only temporary and illusory. So the difference between reality and this spiritual, the reality of the material world, there's a reality in the material world, there's some illusion of reality. The internal potency, meaning the spiritual world, is real, whereas the external manifestation, the material world, is only temporary and illusory. Although it's temporary and illusory, but still people enjoy it. They have the impression that they're actually enjoying this place. Prabhupada said, like the mirage in the desert. In the desert mirage, there is no actual water. There is only the appearance of water. Real water is somewhere else. So we're looking, we want the real thing. People often say like that, I want the real thing. Don't give me, I want the real thing. We're looking for the highest, the real thing. We don't want the cheap, the copy watch. We want the real thing, the real taste. So real water is somewhere else. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but reality of which this is but a shadow is in the spiritual world. Absolute truth is in the spiritual sky, not the material sky. In the material sky, everything is relative truth. That is to say, one truth depends on something else. Right? That's how we define relative truth. Relative truth is in relation to something else. It's one truth which depends on something else. But the absolute truth, that is above everything. In actuality, there's no reality in the manifested world. There appears to be reality, however, because of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world. Of course, common men are not educated to understand that there is a spiritual world. We're so absorbed in the illusion of this material world that we forget there is a a higher abode. There's a spiritual world above everything. So Prabhupada is bringing out this important point. And then he brings it to this discussion about sex. Because in the material world, everything's centered around sex. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. The original fact in the absolute truth, and thus the absolute truth cannot be impersonal. It is not possible to be impersonal and to contain pure sex life. Consequently, the impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abominable mundane sex life because they have overstressed the impersonality of the ultimate truth. Consequently, man, without information of the actual spiritual form of sex, has accepted perverted matter or perverted material sex life as the all in all. So this is the illusion of the material life, that people are thinking material sex life is all in all. They have not understood that this is simply the dim reflection of the real pleasure which is there in the spiritual world. And the impersonalists are condemned for allowing people to become absorbed in this mundane concept of material sex life. Prabhupada said Freud was right. Freud had said that the whole world is based around sex. And Prabhupada said Freud was right. Material world is like that. They're all simply absorbed in the bodily concept of life and thinking how to enjoy mundane sex life. They have no understanding that there is spiritual sex in the spiritual world, pure sex. So we want to give people this knowledge through the Srimad Bhagavatam. They can understand the higher pleasure, not the pleasure of the dogs and hogs, the animals which eat stool. That kind of pleasure is there for these animals, but for the educated, for the self-realized souls, they can understand the higher truth, the absolute truth, and they can understand the nature of the spiritual world and how there is pure sex life. This is spiritual knowledge. To understand these things, people have to purify their existence. Without purifying their existence, they will never be able to understand. So these are some important points from the purport here. There's a bit more. Yes, the Gayatri. Satyam Param Dimahi. Dimahi, meaning to meditate. And Satyam Param, the supreme truth. So I meditate upon him. He is the absolute truth. Gayatri mantra, the Brahma Gayatri mantra, also contains the word Dimahi. So this Dimahi, this is like the seed from the Gayatri mantra, and it's included here in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, Srila Vyasadeva is invoking the Gayatri mantra into the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's indicating also the purpose of this Bhagavatam is like the purpose of the Brahma Gayatri mantra. It's a meditation upon the supreme absolute truth. But to actually meditate on the absolute truth, We have to come to the level of purified goodness. We have to elevate ourselves through the modes of nature and come to the Brahminical platform of goodness. Then we can properly fix the mind on the Lord. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is actually meant for people who can control their mind and senses, fix the mind on the Lord. From Prabhupada's purport, one must therefore acquire Brahminical qualities or be perfectly situated in the quality of goodness in order to chant the Gayatri mantra successfully, and then attain to the stage of transcendentally realizing the Lord, His name, His fame, His qualities, and so on. So chanting the Gayatri mantra is for people who are Brahminically qualified. We don't give the Gayatri mantra to everyone, but for people who are situated in the mode of goodness, then they can chant. And similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam is actually meant for people who are better situated in the mode of goodness. All right, so we'll just review what we covered tonight. What were the objectives? We want you to understand the overview of the first chapter. The first 3 verses were the invocation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? The first verse defines the nature of the Absolute Truth. The second verse describes what is pure religion. And the third verse describes how we can appreciate the sweetness of that actual religion. This is the invocation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Then the chapter goes on to describe qualifications of the speaker, Sutta Goswami. What was his qualification? Do you remember some of the qualifications?
Yes, Maharaj. Free from vices, well-versed in scriptures. Submissive.
Yes?
He should be
Abhinani
submissive.
and Akshatani.
Yes, Prabhu? What did you say?
Sutta Goswami was well versed in the subject matter of Bhagavatam, as well as he has already explained the subject matter.
Yes, he had heard the Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami.
And he had also repeated in the same way, like he got from the disciplic succession. He was submissive, and hence he was, his spiritual masters indulged a lot of mercy on him. And also he associated with other people, other sages, who knew the actual Bhagavatam, like who knew the actual purpose of life.
Yes. And what were some of the qualifications to sit on the Vyasa-san? That he should, they should know that...
Goswami. Free from vice. Goswami.
Yeah, should be a Goswami, and he should be familiar with the 6 philosophies. The 6 philosophical systems, remember we spoke about them? Patanjali, Gautama, and
Sankhya.
Kapila, and Vyasadeva, and these things.
Astavakra.
Astavakra, yes. Okay, so this was all covered, the qualification of the speaker, and then qualification of the audience, and the symptoms of the Kali Yuga, and then the questions which the sages have. That's also there in the first chapter. The sages put questions to Sutta Goswami, the 6 questions. So before our next class, I'd like you to look over those 6 questions, which are there in the student material, right? You all have the copy of the student manual?
Yes.
Maharaj.
So
We
the-
have received it.
So the 6 questions are there, and how they're answered, where to find the answers to these questions. So you can look over that. That's all there in the first chapter, the 6 questions and the symptoms of the Kali Yuga. People are lazy, misguided, unlucky. They live a very artificial way of life. Everything is irregular in their lifestyle, and so they have a short life. And they're very unlucky, always disturbed. These kind of things, right? All right, then personal application, discuss the qualities of a representative of Vyasadeva, right? We spoke about that. And then Shastra Chakshus, characteristics of the people in this age of Kali with reference to the Sanskrit, right? Prayena payusha shabhyat kalovasmin yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrutaha, right? And so these different words were used there to glorify the Kali Yuga people, to glorify all their bad qualities, to point out the real faults, the problem in the Kali Yuga. And we want to avoid these things. All right, then we also presented Krishna as the absolute truth, and we heard the different analogies from Prabhupada's purport, which were given in relation to Lord Krishna as the absolute truth. And the relationship between the absolute and relative truth, we heard the different analogies which were there. What's absolute? The absolute truth is there in the spiritual world, in relation to Krishna. And relative is the material world, always changing, depending on other things. So we spoke on that, and then we spoke also about the authority of the Bhagavatam with reference to other Puranas, erudite scholars. Oh, we didn't mention that, but it's there in the purport. Prabhupada does speak about it, how some people claim that the Bhagavatam was a later edition, it wasn't actually written by Srila Vyasadeva, and they say it was written by somebody called Bopadev. But Prabhupada has quotes to defeat that. And Prabhupada quotes the, is it the Garuda Purana? There's different scriptures where they quote, where it mentions Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is mentioned in many Puranas. So establishing that the Srimad Bhagavatam was there. It's not a new creation, it was there 5,000 years ago. Okay, so here's a quote from Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam is a transcendental science, not only for knowing the ultimate source of everything, but also for knowing our relation with Him and our duty towards perfection of the human society on the basis of this perfect knowledge. Simply by a careful reading, one will know God perfectly well, so much so that the reader will be sufficiently educated to defend himself from the onslaught of atheists. Over and above this, the reader will be able to convert others to accepting God as a concrete principle. From Srimad Bhagavatam, from the preface. So Prabhupada's mode and mission is there. Prabhupada wants that we will learn the Srimad Bhagavatam and we will be convinced and we will convince others and convert others to accept God as a concrete principle. So this is Prabhupada's desire from studying Srimad Bhagavatam. All right, we'll stop here today. We'll ask, is there any questions or anything? Any comments, anything? Anybody like to bring up anything? Want to discuss more?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, Prabhu, yeah?
In one of the slides, we heard about, there were words like pure sex life.
Yes.
Now, how do we define this?
Well, we define this as it must be on the transcendental platform, completely free from any kind of material inebrities, without any thought of bodily consciousness. But on the highest transcendental platform, one is fully conscious of his spiritual identity. So
we assume that pure sex life is only for Krishna and not for living beings?
Well, we have to understand that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. The enjoyment, what we think of enjoyment in this material world is actually the lowest thing in the spiritual world. What we are thinking to be enjoyment here in this world is actually the lowest thing in the spiritual world. So we have to understand what is actual enjoyment. So Lord Krishna enjoys his loving relationships with his devotees. There will be different rasas with Krishna. Different devotees will enjoy different types of loving exchanges with Krishna, according to their nature, according to their rasa. So some devotees will be in their spiritual bodies, they will actually take the form of maybe Krishna's wives in Dwarka. Just like in Vaikuntha, there's a region in Vaikuntha, Dwarka, and Krishna lives there with all of his wives. So many of Krishna's wives are there. And then in Vrindavan, Krishna's there with all the gopis. And the gopis are enjoying with Krishna. So everything will depend on our particular nature of our loving relationship with Krishna. Some people are in the form of cowherd boys. Now they also love Krishna. And they also love Krishna. And it's a very different kind of what we think of sex in the material world. In the spiritual world, it's a very different concept. And because of our polluted consciousness, we're not fully able to appreciate what we mean when we speak about sex in the spiritual world. It's such a pure concept that we have to purify ourselves. And the purification process comes about by studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like the concept of Krishna dancing Rasa Leela, it does not come until the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Because there, within the Rasa Leela, you can see the concept of spiritual sex. But it's very pure, it's the highest thing. And without being properly purified, we will not understand it properly. Therefore, it's kept till the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to go through the first 9 cantos and prepare ourselves to properly understand what is the nature of the spiritual world, and what is the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how he enjoys with transcendental senses.
Maharaj, by what you have been explaining, what I gather is that a pure sex life is only possible and possible when we are trying to enjoy Krishna consciousness. and it is only the concept which can be shared with Krishna rather than anyone else.
Oh, definitely, it's shared with Krishna. And we should understand, our concept is not to enjoy Krishna consciousness, but rather we have the mood of to be the servant of Krishna. Whatever Krishna wants, that is our happiness. Now, in the spirit, just like Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastikam prayer, he speaks about, even if you handle me roughly or make me broken-hearted by not being present before me, you are free to do anything and everything with me, but you are always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. So the final verse of Shikshastikam are the words of Srimati Radharani, and she's speaking to Lord Krishna in that way. And she's saying that if my unhappiness, if my being unhappy makes you happy, then that is my happiness. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it describes how Gopkumar got to Goloka Vrindavan, and he was surprised. He could see how the gopis were always broken-hearted, and they were always feeling lamentation, and they were feeling pain, because they saw Krishna go to the forest every day, and they couldn't go with him. They could only be with Krishna in the night. So the separation from Krishna was unbearable to them. Mother Yashoda would feel the pain of separation every day when Krishna would go to the forest. So that pain, that was the greatest ecstasy of these devotees. Their feeling of separation from Krishna. It appears to be very painful, but it's the highest ecstasy, it's the highest loving emotion. So if we speak about it, if we say enjoying with Krishna, then it's a little difficult to understand fully what it is to enjoy with Krishna. Okay?
Thank you so much, Maharaj. But I had a question that you had kindly mentioned that Sumand Matyo, meaning that even if they come to know about it, unfortunately, they become victim to misguided teachers. Prabhupada is mentioning. So, Maharaj, I had this question that even after coming to Krishna consciousness, this Sumand Matyo, this laziness creeps inside me, and I become victim to sleep, overeating, and all this. So, how, as a sadhak, I keep on this track that my ultimate goal is God realization? How can I? Prabhupada is mentioning so many times, but still this laziness creeps in, and I become a victim of all this. So I wanted to ask that how can, as a sadhak, I can improve on this condition?
Yes, well, you want to try to get more association with senior devotees who can give you more mercy in the form of chastisement, or who can keep you fully engaged, you see. The tendency is to, we go away on our own, and maybe get your own place or something like that, and then you can become lazy, and we can avoid a lot of duties and so on. But if you always stay in the association of devotees, if you're always around the devotees where there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of service going on, then you can avoid the lazy. You won't feel the laziness. You can avoid that. It's just a question of association. You just have to get yourself into the right environment where there's that mood of service and where there's really a lot of service needed to be done, a lot of opportunity for you to take it up, and you can overcome that mentality, that manda bhagya, the laziness, you know. You can conquer it. Without even knowing it, without even thinking about it, you can conquer it. You just get so caught up in the mood of Krishna consciousness and spreading Krishna consciousness movement and being energetic and being enlivened in the association of these kind of devotees, then it will get you out of that lethargy. You have to want to get out of it. It's good you're talking like that. It shows you have a desire. Now you have to do it. You have to make sure you're very careful to put yourself into that place where there's a lot of service, where they need where there's a lot of activity, a lot going on, and this way keep yourself engaged in Krishna consciousness. Do you understand, Maharaji?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you so much. Maharaj, one thing in this, I wanted to ask that you had kindly mentioned that one should be, I should be more engaged in services. But when I put myself in so many services, then as a sadhak, I lose on my sadhana. So one thing is that keeping oneself more engaged in services, but at the same time becoming lazy for your own sadhana, for your personal nourishment. So then, what can be done then?
Well, I don't think it's a disadvantage to your sadhana. But if you're doing service, you see, by doing service, the devotees will give you their blessings. And the people who do a lot of service, they'll get more blessings, and they will, even though their sadhana it appears to suffer, but still, you know, you'll get it done. You'll get your rounds done. You'll get whatever you're supposed to do. You'll get it done. But because you're doing service, you're getting really a lot of mercy. You really get a lot of mercy because you're doing so much service. So it may appear like your sadhana is suffering, but you're still going to do your sadhana. You have to do your sadhana. You can't. You have to chant. You know. You have to. You may finish your rounds in the night. Okay, you finish your rounds at night because you're so busy all day with service. That's okay. It's good.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a very basic question. How would we define Vaibhava?
How would we define what?
Vaibhava, like we have Bhakti Vaibhava course.
Oh, Vaibhava. Vaibhava. Well, Prabhupada gave these names, you know. Actually, these names are just taken from the names which Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati gave in the Gaudiya Math. In the Gaudiya Math, in Bhakti Siddhanta's times, they had all these courses. And if you read Bhakti Vikas Swami's book on Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, you know, he's written a 3-volume book about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. It was published several years ago. And in that book, he has the details about the examination system which Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada had set up. And you can see also the questions even, which were there for the devotees. And the devotees, of course, they didn't have any course or anything. They would just answer the questions, you know. Just like in ISKCON, you know, if people want, they can just take the examination. They don't have to come to the classes. They can just answer all the questions on their own. They don't have to go to all the classes. They can just do the exam, and they can get the certificate that way. So in Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's time, it was like that. So Vaibhava is one of the bhavas. It's one of the different bhavas which are there, and which is mentioned there in Nectar of Devotion. Vaibhava. things which stimulate the emotion. There's different Vaibhavas. That's in this third part of the Nectar of Devotion. You can read the different bhavas which are all described. So Vaibhava is one of these things which is mentioned. Things to stimulate the love for Krishna. The stimulation of the love for Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Yes, any other questions?
I had this question that what's the mode of reading Srimad Bhagavatam? As you kindly mentioned today that one should meditate on the Supreme Lord. But for me, it is very difficult, like to straight away go to the, like, should there be some prayers we must meditate before reading Srimad Bhagavatam? What should be the mode actually?
Well, yes, if you like, you can do that. There are prayers which some devotees like to recite before reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Certainly you can do that. Narayani Mataji, for example, she would regularly recite the prayers which she liked, which glorify the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's up to you. If you like to do that, you can. It's your own sadhana, very nice. Because time is a little bit of a premium, you know, a bit tight on time, so I don't spend too much time to do these things. I expect you to do that on your own. But I regularly do recite prayers to Bhagavatam. I recite prayers also every morning. Different prayers. It's part of sadhana.
Can we receive some prayers from you? Like, is it possible?
Can you fix your mic? Mataji, your voice is not clear.
I was asking that, can we receive some prayers from you?
Your voice is still not clear. I don't know what's wrong with your mic there.
Maharaj, can we receive those prayers from you?
What, about the Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yes, Maharaj, that you are reciting to create the mood.
Okay, yeah, I'll send them. I'll put them in the chat. I'll give them to Ojasvi Prabhu and he'll send them to you all.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Okay, well, yes?
I'm not sure if I understand the concept about relative truth. You explained a little bit. How one truth in the material world is dependent on another. It's relative. I didn't really understand that.
Well, just like we say, well, it's raining in Delhi today. It's a relative truth. You know, it's a relative truth. It's raining in Delhi today. The rain and Delhi are both dependent on Krishna. They're not independent. They're not absolute. So, relative truth, it depends on other things. Oh, this man's very strong. It's a very relative thing. This man's young. It's relative to other people. So generally, material world, we speak in terms of relative truths. But the spiritual world, it's absolute truth, spiritual truth. We don't understand what is actually true. What is the truth? What is here in the material world? That's why they give the examples of the illusions. Just like in illusion, you see water in fire, or you see land on water. So relative things. Relatively, you may think, oh, I'm very healthy. But it's very relative. How long are you healthy for? I'm happy. How long are you happy for? It's relative. It's not eternal. So we want to understand things in terms of spiritual truth, not relative. But the material world is relative. Conditioned souls are all conditioned to think relatively. Yeah? So sometimes these things, you have to read them again and again. You just have to read them again and again. And, you know, it's like the one devotee, she asked Prabhupada, she said, what does it mean, Prabhupada? The moon was churned from the ocean of milk. And Prabhupada said, read it again. And she said, the moon was churned from the ocean of milk. He said, read it again. The moon was churned from the ocean of milk. And Prabhupada said, now do you understand? And she said, yes, Prabhupada. The moon was churned from the ocean of milk. So some of these sections in the Bhagavatam, like that, you know, you have to read it again and again. Usually 3 times is good. Read them 3 times and it starts to make sense. Okay? So there's no class tomorrow, but we're going to meet next week. So you look over the 6 questions which are there and the answers, where to find these answers. And we're also going to look at verses number 2 and 3 of the first chapter. Right? So you please prepare for the classes next Friday and Saturday. So we'll see you then. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai.
Jai.